When she appeared at my door after running from her wedding, I thought I was just helping an old friend, until she slipped into my room that night and changed everything. The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Jake heard the sound of his apartment door slowly creaking open. He looked up from his laptop screen, where he had been working on his research paper for the past 4 hours. His eyes were tired and his back ached from sitting in the same position for too long. Jake lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment near the university campus. His roommate Tom had left for a business trip 3 days ago and wasn't supposed to return until next weekend. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made Jake wonder if Tom had come back early. "Tom, is that you?" Jake called out but got no response. He saved his work and walked toward the living room. What he saw made him stop in his tracks. Standing by the front door was someone he hadn't seen in over 2 years. It was Lisa, his college girlfriend, holding a small suitcase and looking like she had been crying for hours. Her hair was messy, her clothes were wrinkled, and her eyes were red and puffy. She looked exhausted, like she had been driving for a very long time without stopping to rest. "Lisa, what are you doing here?"
"How did you even get in?"
Jake asked, completely shocked to see her. Lisa held up a spare key. "You gave this to me years ago. I never gave it back." Her voice was quiet and shaky. Jake remembered giving her that key during their second year of college, back when they thought they would be together forever. He had completely forgotten about it after their breakup. "I'm sorry for just showing up like this," Lisa said, setting her suitcase down on the floor. "I didn't know where else to go." Jake could see that something was seriously wrong. Lisa had always been strong and independent. Seeing her like this was very unusual and concerning. "What happened? Are you okay?" Jake asked, his voice filled with worry. Lisa took a deep breath and sat down on the couch. "I left David 3 days ago." Jake knew that Lisa had been engaged to David for about 8 months. They were supposed to get married next week. He had seen the wedding photos on social media and had felt a mix of sadness and acceptance when he saw them. "You left him? But wasn't your wedding supposed to be next Saturday?" Jake asked, sitting down across from her. "That's exactly why I left," Lisa said, wiping tears from her eyes. "I was getting ready for the final dress fitting, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. I looked at myself in that white dress, and all I could think about was how wrong everything felt." She paused for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts. Everyone was so excited about the wedding. My mom, his mom, all our friends. But I realized I wasn't excited at all. I was terrified. Not the normal wedding nerves that everyone talks about, but genuine fear about spending the rest of my life with someone who doesn't really know me. Jake listened carefully, not sure what to say. This was a lot to process. His ex-girlfriend had run away from her wedding and driven 400 miles to show up at his apartment in the middle of the night. "I tried to talk to David about postponing the wedding, maybe taking more time to figure things out," Lisa continued. "But he got angry and said I was being ridiculous. He said everything was already paid for, all the guests had made plans, and that I was just having cold feet." "What did you do then?" Jake asked. "I packed a bag while he was at work and left him a letter explaining everything. I know it wasn't the right way to handle it, but I felt trapped. I've been driving for 2 days, staying in cheap motels, trying to figure out what to do with my life." Jake could see how exhausted she was. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she looked like she hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. "Why did you come here?" Jake asked gently. Lisa looked directly at him for the first time since arriving. "Because you're the only person who ever really understood me. Even after everything that happened between us, even after our bad breakup, I knew you would listen to me without judging." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Their relationship had ended badly during their senior year of college. They had both said things they regretted, and they hadn't spoken since graduation. But hearing her say that she trusted him enough to come to him in her time of need meant a lot. "Lisa, you can't just run away from your problems forever," Jake said carefully. "I'm not running away," she replied, getting slightly defensive. "I'm making a choice. Maybe for the first time in my life, I'm actually making a choice based on what I want, not what everyone else expects from me." Jake could hear the determination in her voice, but he could also hear the uncertainty. "Okay, but what's your plan now? You can't just disappear. People are probably worried about you. Your family, your friends, even David." Lisa laughed bitterly. "David isn't worried. He's angry. He's been calling and texting nonstop, telling me how embarrassing this is for him and his family. Not once has he asked if I'm okay or tried to understand why I left." "And your family?" "My mom is furious. She keeps calling and telling me to come home and fix this mess. She says I'm being selfish and immature. Lisa's voice started to break again. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am being selfish. Jake moved to sit next to her on the couch. Hey, don't say that. You have the right to be happy. If something doesn't feel right, you shouldn't ignore that feeling. But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm throwing away something good just because I'm scared? Then you'll figure it out. But you can't marry someone just because other people think you should. That's not fair to you or to him. Lisa nodded slowly. I just need some time to think clearly. Everything has been so overwhelming lately. Jake looked at his small apartment. He had a lot of work to do. His thesis defense was coming up soon, and having his ex-girlfriend stay with him was definitely going to complicate things. But he couldn't turn her away when she clearly needed help. You can stay here for a few days, Jake said. You can sleep on the couch. But you need to call your family and let them know you're safe. They're probably worried sick. Thank you, Lisa said, and for the first time that night she smiled a little. I promise I won't stay long. I just need to figure out my next step. As Jake went to get blankets and a pillow for the couch, he wondered what he had just gotten himself into. Having Lisa back in his life, even temporarily, was going to bring up a lot of old feelings he had worked hard to move past. But looking at her sitting there vulnerable and scared, he knew he had made the right decision. Sometimes people need help, and sometimes you're the only one who can provide it. The night was far from over, and both of them had a lot to think about. 3 days had passed since Lisa arrived at Jake's apartment. During the day, things felt almost normal. They would have coffee together in the morning, and Jake would go to the library to work on his research while Lisa spent time job searching online and calling potential apartments to rent. But the nights were different. Jake could hear Lisa tossing and turning on the couch, sometimes getting up to pace around the living room at 2 or 3 in the morning. She was clearly struggling with something deeper than just the wedding situation. On Thursday night, Jake was lying in bed reading when he heard Lisa's phone buzzing repeatedly. He could hear her answering it in an upset voice, then the sound of her crying softly afterward. This had been happening every night since she arrived. Jake tried to focus on his book, but he was worried about her. He had seen Lisa go through difficult times before, but never like this. She seemed lost in a way that concerned him deeply. Around midnight, Jake heard his bedroom door slowly open. He looked up to see Lisa standing in the doorway, wearing an oversized t-shirt and looking hesitant. "Jake, are you awake?" she whispered. "Yeah, I'm up." "Is everything okay?" he asked, setting his book aside. Lisa stepped into the room but stayed near the door. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I start thinking about everything I've messed up. Do you want to talk about it?" She shook her head. "I'm tired of talking. I'm tired of thinking. I just want to feel normal for a while." Jake could see that she had been crying again. Her eyes were red, and she looked emotionally exhausted. Without saying anything else, Lisa walked over to the bed. Jake moved over to give her space, thinking she just wanted to sit and talk. But instead, she pulled off her t-shirt, leaving her in just her underwear, and lay down next to him. "Lisa, what are you doing?" Jake asked, completely surprised by her actions. "I'm not trying to start anything romantic," she said quickly, seeing the confusion on his face. "I just need to feel close to someone. To feel human again." She positioned herself so that her head was resting on his chest, her arm draped across his stomach. Jake could feel her breathing, which was still uneven from crying. "Is this okay?" she asked quietly. Jake was confused and didn't know how to respond. Part of him wanted to tell her this wasn't a good idea, that it would only make things more complicated between them. But another part of him could hear the pain in her voice and understood that she was asking for comfort, not romance. "Yeah, it's okay," he said softly, though his heart was beating much faster than usual. They lay there in silence for several minutes. Jake could feel Lisa's body slowly relaxing as her breathing became more regular. "David never held me like this," she said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "He never just held me without expecting something in return. Every time we were close, it had to lead somewhere. There was always an agenda." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he just listened. "I forgot what it felt like to just be close to someone because you care about them," Lisa continued. "Not because you want something from them, but just because being near them makes you feel less alone." "How long has it been since you felt that way?" Jake asked gently. Lisa thought for a moment. Honestly, probably not since college. Not since we were together. That admission hung in the air between them. Jake remembered how natural physical affection had been between them back then. They would fall asleep holding each other, wake up tangled together, spend hours just talking while lying close like this. I think that's part of why I ran away from the wedding, Lisa said. I realized I was about to marry someone who never made me feel safe and comfortable. Someone who saw physical closeness as a transaction instead of just a way to connect. Jake felt a wave of sadness for her. He had always assumed that after their breakup, Lisa had found someone who made her happy in all the ways he couldn't. Learning that she had been lonely and disconnected for years made him feel terrible. You deserve better than that, Jake said. Do I, though? Maybe David was right. Maybe I am too difficult to love properly. Don't say that, Jake said firmly. David saying that says more about him than it does about you. Lisa lifted her head to look at him. You always knew how to make me feel better about myself, even when I was being completely unreasonable. You're not being unreasonable now. You're going through something really difficult. I'm so scared, Jake, she admitted. What if I made the wrong choice? What if I threw away my chance at happiness because I was too scared to try harder? Or what if you saved yourself from years of being unhappy with someone who didn't appreciate you? Lisa smiled slightly. You always could see the positive side of things. They talked quietly for the next hour about everything and nothing. Lisa told him about her job at the marketing firm, how she felt like she was just going through the motions every day. Jake told her about his research project and how stressed he was about his upcoming presentation. I missed this, Lisa said eventually. Missed what? Just talking to you. You always listened to me, really listened. You never tried to fix everything or tell me what I should be feeling. Jake realized he had missed it too. Despite everything that had gone wrong between them, Lisa had always been easy to talk to. She understood his sense of humor and never made him feel judged for his thoughts or feelings. As the conversation wound down, Lisa settled back against his chest. Jake could feel her breathing becoming deeper and more regular. Thank you for letting me stay here, she said sleepily. Thank you for trusting me enough to come here, Jake replied. Within a few minutes, Lisa was asleep. Jake lay awake for a while longer, thinking about how strange life could be. 3 days ago, he had been completely focused on his studies and his future career. Now he was lying here with his ex-girlfriend, feeling more connected to another person than he had in months. He wasn't sure what any of this meant for either of them. Lisa was clearly going through a major life transition, and he didn't want to complicate that by bringing up old feelings. But he also couldn't deny that having her here felt right in a way that surprised him. Eventually, Jake fell asleep too, with Lisa still curled up against him. For the first time in days, both of them slept peacefully through the night. When morning came, they would have to figure out what this moment meant and where they would go from here. But for now, they were both exactly where they needed to be. The next morning, Jake woke up to find Lisa already awake, staring at the ceiling with a thoughtful expression on her face. She was still lying close to him, but there was a tension in her body that hadn't been there the night before. Good morning, Jake said softly. Morning, Lisa replied, but she didn't look at him. Are you okay? You seem different. Lisa took a deep breath. I've been thinking about last night, about what happened between us. Jake felt his stomach drop. Lisa, if you're having regrets about... No, that's not it, she interrupted. Last night was exactly what I needed. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely safe with someone. But that's what scares me. She finally turned to look at him. I'm realizing that I've been lying to myself for a very long time. Before Jake could respond, Lisa's phone started buzzing on the nightstand. The caller ID showed David's name. This was the 5th time he had called since 7 in the morning. He's been calling all morning, Lisa said, looking at the phone with dread. You don't have to answer it. I know, but I feel guilty. His family is probably asking him questions he can't answer. The wedding venue, the caterers, all the guests. The phone stopped ringing only to start again immediately. Maybe you should talk to him, Jake suggested carefully. Not to go back, but just to give him some kind of explanation. Lisa nodded reluctantly and answered the phone. Hello, David. Even from across the bed, Jake could hear David's voice through the phone. He was speaking loudly and angrily, though Jake couldn't make out the exact words. David, please calm down, Lisa said. I left you a letter explaining everything. More angry shouting from the other end. No, I'm not coming home right now. I need time to think. Jake watched Lisa's face as she listened to whatever David was saying. Her expression went from apologetic to frustrated to genuinely upset. "That's not fair, David. You can't blame this entirely on me." The conversation continued for several more minutes, with David doing most of the talking and Lisa becoming increasingly defensive. "You know what? You're proving my point right now," Lisa finally said, her voice getting louder. "This is exactly why I left. You never listen to what I'm actually saying. You just get angry and try to make me feel guilty for having feelings." There was a brief pause, then Lisa continued. "I'm not being dramatic, David, I'm being honest. When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling about something without getting defensive or trying to change my mind?" Jake could tell that David was still yelling on the other end of the line. "Fine," Lisa said, her voice now completely calm. "If that's how you really feel about me, then you should be happy I left. Now you can find someone who won't embarrass you or cause problems for your family." She hung up the phone and immediately turned it off. "That sounded intense," Jake said. Lisa laughed bitterly. "He told me I was selfish, immature, and that I had ruined his life. He said his mother was crying because of what I did to their family's reputation." "What about your feelings? Did he ask about those?" "Not once. He was more concerned about what his coworkers were going to think than about why I was unhappy enough to run away 3 days before our wedding." Lisa got up from the bed and started pacing around the room. "You know what the crazy part is? I actually felt guilty when I saw his name on the phone. I was ready to apologize to him for leaving. But you don't have anything to apologize for. That's what I'm starting to realize. And it's terrifying because it means I've been making excuses for him for months, maybe even years." Lisa sat down in the chair by Jake's desk and put her head in her hands. "I think I know why I really came here," she said quietly. "Why?" "Because you're the last person who made me feel like my thoughts and feelings actually mattered. When we were together, you never made me feel crazy for being upset about something. You never told me I was overreacting or being too sensitive." Jake felt a mix of sadness and anger on her behalf. "Lisa, that's basic respect in a relationship. That shouldn't be something special. I know that now, but I got so used to David dismissing my feelings that I started dismissing them too. I convinced myself that I was being too picky or expecting too much." She looked up at Jake with tears in her eyes. "When we broke up in college, do you remember what we fought about?" Jake thought back to their last big argument senior year. "You said I was too focused on my studies and not paying enough attention to our relationship. And you said I was right, that you had been taking me for granted. You apologized and actually tried to change. We didn't break up because you were a bad boyfriend, Jake. We broke up because we were young and scared about the future. So why didn't we try to work it out? Because I was afraid that if we stayed together I would hold you back from your dreams. And you were afraid that you weren't ready to be the partner I deserved." They sat in silence for a moment, both thinking about how different their lives might have been if they had handled things differently. "But the point is," Lisa continued, "even when we were fighting, even when we were breaking up, you never made me feel like I was wrong for having feelings. You never tried to make me feel guilty for wanting more from our relationship." Jake realized that Lisa was comparing every relationship she had after him to what they had shared in college, and apparently nothing had measured up. "Lisa, you can't base your life decisions on our relationship from 6 years ago." "I'm not. I'm basing them on how I deserve to be treated by someone who claims to love me." Lisa's phone, even though it was turned off, had been buzzing periodically with text messages. She turned it back on to check them. 17 messages from David, 8 from my mother and 3 from his mother, she said, scrolling through her phone. All of them telling me what I should do and how I should feel. "What do you want to do?" Lisa set her phone aside and looked directly at Jake. "I want to stop running away from my problems, but I also want to stop letting other people tell me what my problems are." "That sounds like a good start. I think I need to call a therapist. I need to figure out why I stayed in a relationship that made me feel so small for so long." Jake was impressed by her self-awareness. "That sounds like a really smart idea. And I need to find my own place. Not because I don't appreciate you letting me stay here, but because I need to prove to myself that I can take care of myself." "You don't have to rush into anything." "I know, but I also can't hide out here forever. I need to start building the life I actually want, not just running away from the life I don't want." As Lisa started making plans for her future, Jake realized that the scared, confused person who had shown up at his apartment 3 days ago was already becoming someone stronger and more determined. The question now was where that left both of them. 2 weeks had passed since Lisa's phone conversation with David. She had found a therapist who offered video sessions and had already had 3 appointments. Jake could see the positive changes in her. She was sleeping better, eating regular meals, and had even started looking for jobs in the city. Lisa had also found a small apartment about 15 minutes away from Jake's place. It wasn't fancy, but it was affordable and had good natural light. She was planning to move in at the end of the month. Things between Jake and Lisa had settled into a comfortable routine. They would have breakfast together, spend their days working on their respective goals, and often end up talking late into the night about everything and nothing. Jake had to admit that having her around felt natural in a way he hadn't expected. On a Tuesday afternoon, Jake was at the library working on his research when his phone started buzzing with urgent text messages from Lisa. "He's here. David is at your apartment. I don't know what to do. Can you come home?" Jake quickly packed his things and rushed back to his apartment. He found Lisa standing outside the building, looking nervous and upset. "What happened?" Jake asked. "I came back from my therapy session and found him sitting on the steps. He said he's been driving around the city for 2 days looking for me." "What did you tell him?" "I told him we needed to talk, but not here. So we went to the coffee shop on the corner." Jake looked toward the coffee shop and could see David through the window. He was a tall man with dark hair, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in the casual neighborhood coffee shop. "He wants to talk to both of us," Lisa said. "He knows you're involved somehow." "Involved in what?" "You staying here? He thinks you convinced me to leave him. He thinks this is all part of some plan we made together." Jake felt a surge of frustration. "That's ridiculous. You made your own decision." "I know that and you know that, but David has convinced himself that I would never have left him without someone influencing me." They walked back toward the coffee shop. Jake could see David watching them through the window, his expression serious and determined. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked Lisa. "I think so. My therapist and I talked about the possibility of having to face him eventually. She gave me some strategies for staying calm and not letting him manipulate the conversation." They entered the coffee shop, and David immediately stood up from his table. He was taller than Jake remembered from the few times they had met at college events years ago. His presence felt intimidating, which Jake suspected was intentional. "Lisa, we need to talk about this situation," David said, completely ignoring Jake. "Hello, David," Lisa said calmly. "This is Jake. You remember him from college." David gave Jake a cold look but didn't offer to shake hands. "I remember." They sat down at the table with Lisa between the two men. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "I want to understand what happened," David said, speaking directly to Lisa but occasionally glancing at Jake with suspicion. 3 weeks ago, you were excited about our wedding. You were picking out flowers and talking about our honeymoon. Then suddenly you disappear without any real explanation." "I left you a letter explaining everything," Lisa replied. "That letter didn't explain anything. It was just a bunch of vague statements about not feeling ready and needing space. That's not a real explanation." Jake could see Lisa taking deep breaths, probably using the techniques her therapist had taught her. "David, I tried to talk to you about my concerns multiple times before the wedding. Every time I brought up wanting to slow down or postpone things, you dismissed my feelings." "I didn't dismiss them. I tried to reassure you that wedding nerves were normal. But they weren't just wedding nerves, and you never gave me a chance to explain that." David turned to look at Jake. "And where do you fit into all of this? It's quite a coincidence that Lisa ran straight to her ex-boyfriend when she needed help." "I didn't know Lisa was coming here," Jake said calmly. "She showed up at my door and I offered to help a friend who was in trouble." "A friend?" David laughed bitterly. "Is that what we're calling it?" "David, stop," Lisa said firmly. "Jake has been nothing but respectful and supportive. He didn't influence my decision to leave. He didn't even know I was having doubts about our relationship." "So you were having doubts? For how long?" Lisa hesitated for a moment. "Honestly? For months, maybe even longer." "And you never thought to discuss this with me?" "I tried, but every conversation turned into you explaining why I was wrong to feel the way I felt." David's face was getting red with frustration. "Lisa, I spent 2 years planning a future with you. I bought you a ring. We put deposits down on venues. We sent out invitations. You can't just throw all of that away because you're having some kind of personal crisis." It's not a personal crisis, David. It's me finally being honest about what I want from a relationship. And what you want is him. David pointed at Jake. What I want is to be with someone who listens to me, who respects my feelings, and who doesn't try to control every aspect of our relationship. I never tried to control you. Lisa stared at David for a long moment. You chose the restaurant for every date we went on. You decided where we would live after the wedding. You picked the honeymoon destination without asking my opinion. You even chose the engagement ring without finding out what style I liked. I was trying to take care of everything so you wouldn't have to worry about it. But I wanted to be part of those decisions. I wanted to feel like we were building a life together, not that you were building a life and inviting me to join it. Jake watched this conversation with fascination and sadness. It was clear that David genuinely believed he had been a good partner, but he had no understanding of what Lisa actually needed from their relationship. This is all very touching, David said sarcastically. But what about all the people who are affected by your decision? My family has already spent thousands of dollars. Our friends have booked flights and hotels. My boss gave me time off for the wedding and honeymoon. I'm sorry about the inconvenience and the money, Lisa said, but I can't marry someone just because it would be expensive to cancel the wedding. David turned back to Jake. I suppose you think you can give her what she needs? This isn't about me, Jake replied. This is about Lisa figuring out what she wants for her own life. Right. And it's just a coincidence that what she wants happens to involve living with her ex-boyfriend. Lisa stood up from the table. David, I came here to give you closure and to apologize for the way I handled the situation. But I'm not going to sit here and let you insult Jake or make accusations about something that isn't true. So that's it? You're really not coming home? No, I'm not. I'm staying here and I'm building a new life for myself. David also stood up, his face showing a mixture of anger and defeat. I hope you realize what you're giving up, he said to Lisa. I hope he's worth throwing away everything we had together. What we had wasn't working. David, not for me. David looked like he wanted to say more, but instead, he just shook his head and walked out of the coffee shop. Lisa sat back down, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Are you okay? Jake asked. Actually, yes. I think I am. As they watched David drive away through the coffee shop window, Lisa reached over and squeezed Jake's hand. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for standing up for yourself. For the first time since this whole situation began, Lisa looked truly at peace. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with David at the coffee shop. Lisa had moved into her small apartment and had found a job at a local marketing company that she actually enjoyed. Her therapy sessions were going well, and she had even made some new friends through a book club she joined. Jake had successfully defended his thesis and was now working at a research firm downtown. His life had also changed dramatically over the past few months, though in ways he hadn't expected. After Lisa moved out, Jake realized how quiet his apartment felt without her there. They still saw each other regularly, but it wasn't the same as sharing daily routines and late-night conversations. What surprised Jake the most was how naturally they had slipped back into each other's lives. It didn't feel like they were trying to recreate their college relationship. Instead, it felt like they were discovering who they were as adults and finding out if they still fit together. They had been taking things very slowly. After everything Lisa had been through with David, neither of them wanted to rush into anything serious. But Jake couldn't deny that his feelings for Lisa had grown stronger over the months. On a Saturday morning, Jake was having coffee at his usual spot near the university when Lisa called him. Are you busy today? She asked. Not particularly, why? I got a call from David's mother yesterday. She wants to meet with me. Jake was surprised. What does she want? She said she has some of my things from David's apartment and she wanted to return them. But I think she really just wants to talk. How do you feel about that? Nervous but also curious. I actually liked his mother when we were together. She was always kind to me. Do you want me to come with you? Lisa paused for a moment. Would you mind? I know it's probably awkward for you. It's fine. When and where? They met David's mother, Mrs. Chen, at a quiet restaurant across town. She was a small, elegant woman in her 50s who had always reminded Jake of his own grandmother. Lisa, thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Mrs. Chen said as they sat down. Of course.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. Concerned about David, but okay. She glanced at Jake. Hello, Jake, I remember you from Lisa's graduation. Hello, Mrs. Chen, it's good to see you again. Mrs. Chen had brought a small box with her, which she placed on the table. These are some of your things that David found after you left. Your college textbooks, some jewelry, a few photos. Thank you, Lisa said, though she seemed more interested in the conversation than the items. I wanted to talk to you because I think there are some things you should know, Mrs. Chen continued. About David and about what happened after you left. Lisa looked curious but cautious. What kind of things? First, I want you to know that I don't blame you for leaving. I was disappointed about the wedding being canceled, but after talking to David over the past few months, I understand why you felt you had no choice. This was not what Lisa had expected to hear. After you left, David was angry for weeks. He kept saying that you had embarrassed him and that you were being unreasonable, but as time went on, and especially after he heard about your conversation at the coffee shop, he started to think more seriously about your relationship. Mrs. Chen paused to sip her tea. He came to me about a month ago and admitted that he had never really asked you what you wanted. He said he had been so focused on creating what he thought was a perfect life that he forgot to include you in the planning. Jake watched Lisa's face as she processed this information. He also told me about some of the things you said to him that day, about him choosing restaurants and vacation destinations without asking your opinion. He said he had never realized he was doing that. Is he okay? Lisa asked, and Jake could hear genuine concern in her voice. He's seeing a counselor now. He's trying to understand why he approaches relationships the way he does. I think your leaving was actually the wake-up call he needed, though I know that wasn't your responsibility to provide. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad he's getting help. I never wanted to hurt him. I just couldn't pretend to be happy anymore. I know, dear. And I think deep down, David knows that too. Mrs. Chen reached across the table and patted Lisa's hand. I also wanted to tell you that I think you made the right choice. Not just about David, but about building your own life. You seem much happier now. I am happier. It took me a while to figure out who I was when I wasn't trying to be what someone else wanted me to be. That's a hard lesson to learn, but an important one. They talked for another hour about Lisa's new job, her apartment, and her plans for the future. Mrs. Chen seemed genuinely interested in Lisa's well-being, which touched both Lisa and Jake. As they were getting ready to leave, Mrs. Chen turned to Jake. Are you two together now? She asked directly. Jake and Lisa looked at each other, both slightly embarrassed by the question. We're taking things slowly, Lisa answered honestly. Good, that's smart, Mrs. Chen smiled. You both seem very different from who you were in college. More mature, more sure of yourselves. After Mrs. Chen left, Jake and Lisa decided to take a walk through the nearby park. That went better than I expected, Lisa said. She's a very wise woman. I can see where David gets his good qualities. I feel bad that their family went through all that stress because of my decision. Lisa, you can't take responsibility for other people's reactions to your choices. You did what you needed to do to be happy. They sat down on a bench overlooking a small pond. Can I ask you something? Lisa said. Of course. Do you think we're making a mistake? Getting involved with each other again after everything that's happened? Jake had been thinking about this question for months. I think we're both different people than we were in college. We've both learned things about ourselves and about relationships that we didn't know before. That's not really an answer. Jake smiled. I think the fact that we're taking it slowly and talking about it means we're not making the same mistakes we made before. But what if we're just comfortable with each other because we're familiar? What if we're not really right for each other? We're just afraid to start over with new people. That's possible, Jake said honestly. But I don't think that's what this is. What do you think it is? Jake took Lisa's hand and looked at her seriously. I think we're two people who cared about each other a long time ago, who have grown up and learned from their mistakes, and who are discovering that they still care about each other now. Lisa smiled. That's a much better answer. I also think, Jake continued, that we're both finally at a place in our lives where we know what we want from a relationship, and what we want seems to match up pretty well. Most of the time, Lisa laughed. Most of the time is pretty good odds. They sat in comfortable silence for a while watching ducks swim around the pond. I have something to tell you, Lisa said eventually. What's that? My lease is up next month. Are you thinking about moving? Lisa grinned. Actually, I was thinking about moving in with someone I know. If he'll have me. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Are you sure you're ready for that? I'm sure, but only if we agree to keep talking to each other the way we have been. And only if we promise to be honest about what we want instead of just going along with what we think the other person want. I think I can handle that. Good, because I'm really tired of living without you. Jake leaned over and kissed her. And for the first time in years, everything felt exactly right.